Hey, Sista Brunch family, welcome back to another episode of the Sista Brunch podcast, where we share the stories of Black women and gender-expansive people thriving in entertainment and media. We so appreciate you being here for another season with us and for all the ways that you uplift us and our guests. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Sista Brunch Podcast. Sign up for our monthly newsletter on our website, sistabrunch.com, which actually is monthly, but we'll also be releasing it weekly during the regular season. That's how you can also follow all of these exciting updates that we have for you, like Sista Brunch going to the Sundance Film Festival, where we will cover all the films by and about Black women and gender-expansive people. We're returning to Essence this year. We're partnering with Black Girls Film Camp this season and sharing our shows with their alumni co-hosts for a few of our episodes. Lots of amazing things are happening, and we are so grateful to you, our listeners, for listening and sharing, reviewing, and finding ways to support us and our guests. And that brings me to today's guest, who is dedicated to supporting Black filmmakers and all the work that they do. Our guest is Hurriyah Muhammad. She is a powerhouse in the world of independent filmmaking. She's celebrated for her role as the co-founder and former executive director of the Black TV and Film Collective. You got to follow their work if you're not doing it already. I mean, what are you doing listening to Sista Brunch and not being part of the Black TV and Film Collective? She's a mentor. She's a workshop leader. She leads workshops on pretty much every aspect of filmmaking. She really is an expert in all. She's done a lot. And so she's got all this knowledge that she shares. She launched the Black Producers Fellowship, which grants $25,000 awards towards enhancing the work of Black producers. She also won the Sundance Creative Producing Award in 2020 for the narrative feature Farewell Amor by director Ekwa Msangi. I can't wait to talk about that a little later, but I have to just plant a seed that one of our show creators, Christabel Nsiabuati, also our executive producer for seasons 1 through 3, recently had Ekwa Msangi on her podcast, The Cipher, to talk about Farewell Amor. She got to see it. I'm jealous because I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to make sure I see it. And now let's welcome our lovely guest, Hurriyah Muhammad.
Wow, thank you. That was such an amazing introduction. And you used the word powerhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always like, how do I describe this person in one word? And I felt like it was perfect for you. Yeah, absolutely. So we love to ask our guests to take us as far back as they would like. Could be your birth, if you want to go that far, your parents' birth, your grandparents, as far back as you would like, to share with us the journey of how you got to being the powerhouse that you are.
Interesting. Well, it all started in a land far, far away.
I love it. I'm ready.
No, I'm a native of Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland in the house, and I am a baby girl in a family of 8 children.
Wow.
This whole thing about birth order is like, I really think it's true, because for me, being the baby, it really protected me, and in that protection, it gave me a sense of security to go out and explore and just kind of take on the world as I saw.
Yes.
Fit. And so I got into this industry after a failed career as a novelist. I always wanted to write the great American novel,
Okay.
but I was never disciplined enough to actually do it. I would get like 100 pages in, and I would lose interest in that particular story and those particular characters, and I would be on to the next one. And then I was watching this really amazing show that I'm sure you know, called Girlfriends. And yeah, everybody loves Girlfriends, right?
We've had Kelly Edwards on, I think 3 times, who was one of the development executives that helped create the show. Yes, we love it.
I love Kelly. Yeah, she gave me some advice a few years ago that always stuck with me. So now when you say powerhouse, that's a power.
She is, and you are too. Absolutely.
Okay, I receive it today.
Good.
And so I was watching Girlfriends and I was like, somebody's writing this. I can write this. And I had
Yes.
never really considered screenwriting or, entertainment media. And no time did it ever enter my brain to say, this is actually a career that I could pursue until I
Mm.
was watching that show and I realized that, hey, why don't I try my kind of hand as a screenwriter? And I found that it was right in line with my stamina as a writer because it's about
Yes.
120 pages and it's not even the whole page. It's like the middle of the page, and so, and I was really good at it, and I took a couple of classes and I said, you know what? I'm going to move to Los Angeles and I'm going to become a screenwriter. I didn't know
Wow.
anybody in LA. I didn't know where I was going to live. I didn't know where I was going to work. I had never been to LA before, but I knew that I was too young to be doing something that I was not passionate about. At the time, I
Mm.
was working in advertising and I was really good at it. I was an account supervisor managing like campaigns, advertising campaigns.
Okay. And we should also mention, just to go back a little bit, that you studied computer science at Spelman. Is that right?
Yes, Spelman in the house.
I love it. I love it. I think you might, I can't believe this, but I think we've had Howard grads, but I'm like, is this our first? This can't be our first Spelman grad. Now I'm going to feel bad that I said that because I know we'll go back and see them. But I did want to point out that you studied computer science. You were going to be a novelist and you were in advertising. And I just love when our guests have these kind of varied backgrounds and that we can see how they came together to make sense that you ended up. So I'm curious if computer science, and certainly having gone to Spelman, if that also affected part of this journey at all.
It's so interesting because I remember one time I was having a conversation with my baby brother because I'm actually not the youngest child. I have a baby brother.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
he's the baby boy and I'm the
He's
baby girl. And
okay.
he had went to the army straight out of high school.
Hmm.
And when he got out of the army, he said he didn't want to go to college because he didn't know what he wanted to major in at that time. And I said to him, Omar, you know, if I look back over the twists and turns that my career had taken, it makes total sense where I am now. I can totally connect the dots looking
Hmm.
in reverse. But back then, I could have never have charted
Yes.
how,
Yes.
going left is going to, open up this door. And then when I walk through that door, this other opportunity or this other thing is going to pique my interest.
Mm.
And that's going to lead to something else. But everything looking back set me up for the next thing. So for me, computer science was mandated. My mom, she told me, listen, you're going to major in a science or you're going to come home and you're going to go to Cleveland State. Which one? And
Oh,
so,
wow. Okay.
yeah, Black mothers, they're like, because I was majoring in English because like I said, I wanted to be a
Yeah.
novelist. And my mother was like, how is that going to pay the bills? Like, you better
Mm.
major in a science and stop playing because I was good in math and science. And so I said, okay, I'm going to major in computer science. But you know what that degree did for me? It taught me how to problem solve very analytically,
Yeah.
and very unemotionally, and just approach problems from a very analytical standpoint.
Mm.
If I
Mm.
go left, what's going to happen? If I go right, what's going to happen? If I go forward, what's going to happen? If I don't move at all, what's going to happen?
Mm.
If I take one step back,
Mm.
what's going to happen? And I think that in my career as a producer and just in life in general, it really helps to be able to look at problems with more of a rational type of viewpoint and then layer on all those other things
Yeah.
like our emotions and our sense of the world and our sense of identity
Hmm.
and all of that kind of stuff. But computer science really helped me.
I love that. I love that. And then you did business. Did you do an MBA?
I did an MBA.
Okay.
So basically, so I went to LA and I said, let me get on a set. If I'm going to be a screenwriter, let me figure out how to make movies because I have no idea how to make movies. So I need to figure out how movies are made so that I can write something that somebody actually wants to make. So I
Mm.
answered an ad for a production assistant. And of course, they emailed me back right away because that's free labor. And And
Right.
they gave me an address for a house in Crenshaw, like off of Crenshaw. And
Mm.
like I said, I'd never been to Los Angeles. I knew really nothing about it. And so I'm like, oh my God, Crenshaw. My only frame of reference really is Boys in the Hood.
Right,
And
right,
I'm
right.
like, I'm gonna get like the Crips and the Bloods, and they're gonna jack
Right.
my car, and I'm gonna be like, so I was petrified driving over
Mm.
to this address, but I said, I got to do it for my art. And, I was gripping the steering wheel so like tight, my knuckles were turning white. And I just realized that, like, man, this neighborhood is nice. These homes are very big.
Okay. Got palm trees out front.
And so I get to the house and the door is wide open, and I just follow the voices back to the kitchen, and there was a production meeting that was happening, and it was the director, the cinematographer, and an executive producer sitting around the table, and three men, and none of them looked at me, none of them even acknowledged. I'm sure I
Mm.
said hello. They didn't even bother to turn, and I just sat down at the table and started listening. And they're saying, yeah, we need this, we need that, da 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 da, we need this. And they said, I need a script, we need a script supervisor. Somebody write that down. And I said, I can do that. And then all of a sudden, all these guys turned to me, they shut up and they turned to me and they said, you could do that? I was like, sure. Now, I didn't know what a script
Yeah,
supervisor was. I told you I never made a movie
I
before.
know. I was like, wait a minute. You went from PA to script supervisor. I love it.
And it shows the nature of that production, that somebody could walk off the street, get a
Mm.
job as a script supervisor. But I actually started producing that film for them. And it was in
Wow.
conjunction with another woman who was actually also an actress on the film, but she knew how to make movies, and she was a producer, but she was acting in the film. So it was only so much she could do.
Mm.
And so she and I kind of teamed up. And for me, it was just common sense. Like, you have to tell people what time they need to be
Mm.
there. You have to have food for people. You have to have shelter. You
Right,
have to,
right,
like,
right.
create an environment in which people can do their best work. And that really launched my producing career, because from there I produced another film and another film and another film, but I
I
never took
love
my
it.
eye off the goal of screenwriting. And after a few years, I got an opportunity to produce a film that I had written. And so that was the first screenplay that I had that was optioned. This is Hurriyah Muhammad, and you're listening to Sister Brunch.
Sisters and siblings, thank you so much for listening to Sister Brunch, where we champion the triumphs of Black women and gender expansive people in entertainment and media. Let's pick up where we left off with our remarkable guest and the powerhouse, Hurriyah Muhammad. And just before we do that, though, we do ask you, our dear listeners, to share the love. Tell us what you think of the show. Tell us your favorite brunch items by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Tell us about that project.
Well, listen, I think that I said to myself at that time, I'm going to become a producer, because producing, I want to be at the top of the totem pole. I want to be the
Mm.
one hiring and giving jobs.
Mm.
And I don't ever want to have to wait for someone to give me a job. I want to be at
Mm.
the top of the industry.
Mm.
And what I didn't know at that time is independent producers are not at the top of the
No.
industry at all.
No. We like to think we do a lot. We do a whole lot, but we don't get to make the decisions, do we?
Yeah, I didn't know. But I think that this industry is a lot like, I give the parable of, like, somebody, if you never seen or encountered an elephant before, if someone blindfolds you and they ask you, what is an elephant? And you're like, you have the tail, and you're like, oh, well, an elephant is like this long, skinny thing with like some hair on it.
Mm.
Or like
Mm.
somebody else has the ear, and they're like, oh, it's an elephant is this big floppy thing, and it's like kind of like cartilage. It feels like cartilage, and it's a little bit like velvety, and
Mm.
somebody else has the tusk. They're going to give a different answer for what an elephant was. And I didn't have the sense, because I had too much confidence at the time. I thought I knew everything. To understand, like, Hurriyah, this is just one vantage point of the
Mm.
industry. But I don't take anything away from my journey, because of the fact that I am now able to produce content and produce films. That allowed me to then, when I was ready, begin to produce the films that I had written and directed. And if I had not done it that way, then I would have been waiting for someone looking for a producer. And it wouldn't have opened up all the wonderful opportunities that it's opened up, like Sundance and working with
Yes.
Ekwa and so many other things.
Yes. I love it. I love it. So okay, you mentioned Ekwa. I want to touch a little bit on the Black TV Film and Film Collective, because at what point did you start to both understand yourself as a producer, but also step into this leadership role of founding something that was going to, help so many Black folks who are in the industry?
Yeah. So in, 2008, that's when the market crashed, the housing market crashed.
Mm,
The housing market crashed.
it sounds right.
Something happened.
Some miserable time. Yeah. I think the previous WGA strike, it was like there was all kinds of stuff
It was
happening all at once. Yeah.
all kind of craziness. And
Mm,
and no one was investing in independent films at that time. So and also my mom was sick at that time, so I wanted to come back to the
mhm.
East Coast and take care of my mom. And so I did that for 2 years. And then my mom passed away, and I was like, okay, well, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna go back to LA? Am I gonna stay here on the East Coast? And I was like, I really kind of want to go to school again. And I never thought I would ever say that, because when I got out of Spelman, when I graduated, I said, I'm never going back to school again. That's it for me and formal education. But
Mm,
I was thirsty, for that type of environment again. And it felt safe at that time, where it kind of felt like a little bit of the wind had gone from my cells, and I
mm.
was grieving a lot, and I wanted to be also on the East Coast because that's where my family was and that's where my best friend was. So I decided to go, and that's when I got and NYU had a dual degree program. They have an MBA's MFA program. And I was like,
Oh,
okay, this
nice.
sounds really cool. So, but the way it works is you have to be admitted both to the MFA as well as the MBA. And
Mm,
so I applied. Tish didn't offer me any money. And so I was like, all
mm.
right, well, I'm not going to go to school to get an MFA and have
Not
people
in that
pay for my
expensive
study.
ass city.
But I
Right. Yeah.
am, but I was interested in the MBA, and they also offered me some money. So I was like, okay, so I got my MBA. And then while I was on the East Coast, I had never worked in this industry on the East Coast before.
Mm,
And and I really love like just making films. So I started producing shorts. And we're in LA, I was producer features. So if you look like at my IMDb, you'll see I went from producer features to producing a lot of shorts. And that's because I came to the East Coast while I was in school, and I started just meeting people who had
hmm.
scripts, who had a couple of dollars. And it was like a kind of like a side hustle for me while I was in school to produce these shorts on the side. And it was fun. But the
Yeah.
more I got entrenched in the filmmaking community here in New York, I started to just meet people who were attracted to the things that I knew. And I started doing like table reads, and I was going to
Mm,
events, and I would invite, some of the Black artists that I was meeting to go to these events with me. And before you know it, like we kind of started a meetup group. And we had so many people in the meetup group coming to our events that we would have a waiting list. And we would tell people, listen, if you don't
wow.
show up, you're not going to be able to come to one of our events again for like 3 months. You're not going to be able to get on the RSVP list, because it's
Okay.
people who could have come.
Yeah.
And then we said to ourselves, what we're doing this really should be a nonprofit. And we said, okay, if we get to 1,000 members before the end of the year, we're going to start a nonprofit. And we got to like maybe 979 or 78 or something like that. And the next year, we formalized as the Black TV and Film Collective. And
Nice.
honestly, the Black TV and Film Collective is such a big part of my heart, because it is artists who are coming together and not relying on, somebody to give us this or help us in this way, but we're just helping each other. We're saying,
Yes.
okay, show up. And if you keep showing up with your script, it's going to get better, because we're going to continue to table read it. We're going to continue to give you feedback on it. And when you're ready to shoot it, guess what? We're going to be invested in it, and we're going to help. So, so many of my projects I could not have done were it not for the Black TV Film Collective. And I know that there's so many other projects that would not have gotten done were it not for the Black TV Film Collective. There's a woman named Christine Shaw. She's a cinematographer. And it's so amazing because I had lost track of her. And then I saw her on Instagram, and she actually is one of the sideline camera operators for the Boston Celtics. And I was like,
What?
and I remember when Christine was first starting out.
Oh, see, that's the best.
I
That's the
remember it. And
best.
there's so many stories of, of people who I remember Sam Hicks, who now he owns, a camera gear rental company in Los Angeles called Sam Shot It. And I remember when Sam was first starting out and was coming to our events, and he didn't even know how to write a script. There's
I
London,
love it.
who's a big time producer. Like it's just so many.
That's what led you to make the fellowship, it sounds like, too, which is like, and it's what we want to do at Sister Brunch. It's like on one hand, we want to uplift the current work, right? Like part of it is this is somebody who's working right now. You should know them. You should know their work. You should support their work. But also we started to realize now that this is our 5th season, that we're also creating this archive. Because when we look at our guests even from season 1 who have gone on to do amazing things, it's like, yes, this is what this is about. So for that fellowship, can you share what does the fellowship entail? How can folks get it? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the Black Producers Fellowship. And for me, it was basically there's a lot of support out there. Well, when I say a lot, that's not true. There is some support out there for directors, and there's some
Mm-hmm.
support out there
Mm-hmm.
for writers. But
Mm-hmm.
there's very little support out there for Black producers.
Mm-hmm.
And myself having walked the road of the independent producer, I know how hard it is to find support for our work and to find community. So that's really what led me to say we need a Black Producers Fellowship.
Hey, it's Fanchin, and we are so grateful to you for tuning in. We're taking a quick break here, but don't go anywhere because we would love it while we're on pause if you would head over to Instagram and follow us at Sister Brunch Podcast. We also post our clips on TikTok, on Trujulo's TikTok. So that's at Trujulo Media, Trujulo Media. You can also find us at that same profile on our YouTube channel, Trujulo Media.
Honestly, I say if you're out there, join the Black TV and Film Collective and just listen for updates on when the fellowship is opening back up. Our fellows, the first year, our cohort, there was Pens and Pencils, and that went on to win a NAACP, was nominated for an NAACP award, or
Yes.
either it won an NAACP award.
Yes.
There's so many others, the Mechanics Rose that played at so many different film festivals. I'm having a mama moment. I have a 3-year-old, so sometimes it's hard for me to remember things, but
I mean, when you're a powerhouse, that happens. And I obviously just knowing about you, knowing about all the work you do, I'm just like, there's so much synergy. So obviously we gonna be in touch after this about all the things. So I would love to talk about your process of actually producing something, because our listeners, a lot of our listeners are curious about the film industry and not necessarily in it. And then we've got, plenty of folks who do know, but maybe they're executives or maybe they're cinematographers and they also don't necessarily know the process. So maybe we could take Farewell Amor as an example, or if you have something you're working on now that you want to share, but kind of walking us through that process of either you find something you love and you want to produce it, or someone comes to you as a producer. Could you give us kind of like the quick version of what that looks like from soup to nuts, as they say, like all the way through distribution?
Yeah, sure. Like with Farewell Amor, I was lucky because I found somebody that I love, which was Ekwa Msangi. And she and I had been working together for a couple of years, and she told me the story about her aunt and her uncle who were separated for over 20 years and how they managed to stay married and also raise a son, across oceans and, build a house back in Kenya while her uncle was here in the US, and how her aunt and her uncle, still held out hope that they would be united, reunited again as husband and wife and as a family one day, and that God was just, this was their test here on this earth. And I was like, that's really interesting, Ekwa. You should write about that. And so she did. She started writing about it. And, the producing process starts with something like that. It starts with finding some intellectual IP, in other words, a story that you really like are just captivated by, and something that just like it's like it's like something you don't want to let go of, because it is so hard get anything made or to make anything. So it has to be a story and also people that you really want to go through the fire with, and that, no matter how many years it's going to take you to make it, because it took us 5 years to make Farewell or More, maybe even 6 when we started from that point. And so Ekwa, she started working on the script. And at the same time, I started finding us development funds for the film and, trying to pad the coffers in terms of funding. And we got a grant called the Jerome Foundation grant, which was our first money in for the film. And after that, that kind of made it real. Like, okay, because the Jerome Foundation grant was like a $30,000 grant. And so we said, okay, this is a nice piece of change. So let's keep going. This is something. And then after that, we got NISCA, which was probably like 25,000. And we started applying for fellowships and labs. And thereafter, I got the Sundance Producing Fellowship, which more than a grant, it came with mentorship. And also really, before that, the first thing we got was the Tribeca Institute grant.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing about it is the grants, the fellowships and the labs, they all kind of track each other's projects. So once we got Tribeca, that put us on the radar for Sundance. And Sundance started like really like paying attention to us. And I remember at Tribeca, they have like a kind of like these industry meetings. And we met with the woman who runs the Sundance Screenwriting Lab. And the first thing she asked us, and she only asked us one question. She said, and everybody else that we met that day had asked us, like, how much is it going to cost? What's your timeline? What's this? What's that? And she sat down at the table and she said, how's it going to make me feel? And Ekwa and I were like, shishy foo foo Sundance people.
What you mean?
Talking about, and
that's what it's about, isn't it? Wow.
That's what it's about. That's why we make movies to, to feel something, and people, and that's why we don't turn away, because we feel something, And so the question was spot on. And so I'm so grateful that we got into the lab, and that because we learned so much going through the Sundance Producing Lab, and it introduced us to the industry in a way that was just amazing for us and our project. And similarly, we workshopped the films through not only Sundance, but also through so many other labs that we got into. And we went through like maybe 17 versions of the script. And that's what producing is. Producing is finding collaborators, finding people who believe in your film, going out there, finding people who will advocate on your behalf, and introduce you and get you into rooms that you can't get in yourself, And so, especially independent producing. And that's what it was like. And simultaneously, I knew that we were going to shoot the film in my neighborhood. So I'm a big people person. So, as Ekwa was writing the film, I was thinking about locations in my neighborhood and, befriending or further, developing the relationships of like entrepreneurs and folks who own the shops, like the tea shop and, the local theater and the this and the that, places that I knew we would need for locations. And so I probably like soft prep that film for about a year before we shot it, so that once we finally had the money, we could just kind of hit the ground running. And producing is that's what it is. It's about like those small steps that you take and you just keep going. So many times people are going to ghost you. Funders are going to ghost you. They're going to meet you and they're going to say, oh, I'm so excited about this. This sounds so interesting. Send me the information. Send me your deck. Send me your material. Send me your script. And then you'll never hear from them again after you send it. But you just got to keep going.
Yes. Ah, yes. Oh my goodness, you're a perfect guest. So we're gonna close this out because you're a mama and you continue to be a powerhouse, and we want to let you get some rest and joy and all those things in between all the work you do. So we have our final signature Sister Brunch question, which is that you and young Hurriyah are sitting down to a Sister Brunch. What are you both eating? What are you both drinking? And what do you tell her?
I think we're having a tea party. Yeah, probably
Lovely.
with some apple juice and some graham crackers, just something like
Oh,
that.
sweet.
And I'm gonna tell her, like, don't worry so much. Things are gonna happen for you and because of you, and it's all gonna work itself out. And don't worry so much, and try to have fun along the way.
Sweet. Hurriyah Muhammad, thank you so much. Thank you for being here and for all that you do for the filmmaking community and for all of the stories that I know you will continue to help birth into the world that really matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, and I hope that I said something that it resonated for someone and that helped someone along the way.
A big, big thank you to our listeners for subscribing, for sharing your reviews, for sharing the shows with your friends and family and colleagues and community, and for lifting up our guests and their projects, most importantly, for all the ways as well that you share your stories with the world. You can read the transcripts of every single episode and find show notes on our website, sisterbrunch.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter on the website. Season 5 of Sister Brunch is brought to you by Trujillo Productions. Our show creators are Anya Adams, Christabel Ncia-Boadi, Brittany Turner, and me, Fanchon Cox. Sister Brunch is a Women Make Movies Production Assistance Program project. We acknowledge that the land we record our podcast on is the original land of the Tongva and the Chumash people. We cannot wait to see you next time. Take care, everybody.